Yeah, that's the where let's see. Well, yeah, that's a Techno Salado chair that I got from Totokayo actually. Um, on my way back, I'm saying my way back, but like one day I was going to the sample sale that they had when I was at Nike actually, and I doubled back to the store when they were like cleaning out and moving from the 54 Crosby Street location, I believe it was.
Okay.
And yeah, they were getting rid of everything, and I knew that the furniture was crazy because when we first started in 2016, all of the guys, like we were like, tasked with moving all of that furniture up and down those, I think it was like the bottom level, mid-tier level, top level, women's level, and then roof, so five stories. And so the men were like tasked with like moving all that furniture around. So I was like, oh wow, there's an opportunity to at least buy a few of the pieces. And so I got this Techno Salado chair from the 1960s, and the patina is beautiful. It's aging gracefully.
Yeah, it looks great. We were kind of talking about that earlier today, John and I. Just Toto Kylo, the whole story of Toto Kylo, kind of the rise, downfall, aid supply, all that stuff. Just because where we're at now, I mean, Need Supply was like the place in Richmond at that point.
Yeah.
And it is funny, there's so many people that used to work for Need Supply or Toto Kylo that are actually in Richmond.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned to you before,
Chris Green.
Well, there's Chris Green, Ethan, what is Ethan's last name? Hickerson? He did some of the photography.
Got it.
And then Christina Campbell, she was more on the need side than the Toto Kylo side. I know she was doing like customer service, if I remember. Yeah. So it's just kind of funny because like, obviously you were at Toto Kylo, and that's how you and I initially met, like back in, I don't even remember the year, maybe it was like 2015, something like that. I came into the store, I tried on a pair of Rico and his Geo baskets. And I remember distinctly because you were wearing a Kiko Kostanov Stussy reconstructed sweater before like anybody was even
it was like
doing that.
So it's a funny story. I have two stories about that actually. So obviously it's a contemporary men's and women's store. So there was a bit of like apprehension about having this guy walking around the store, working in the store with a hoodie on, but the way I merchandise it, it was like, nah, like he can wear that. And so it was crazy because I feel like in two ways, it was like on the fashion side of it, I was wearing, just cotton with screen printed, Stussy on it, but it was reconstructed by Kiko Kostanov. And then, he had that like cachet of like Nick Knight and Show Studio and all that type of stuff like that. And so Philip was like Gio's right hand. And he was like, no, it's kind of like in the like the realm of like Yoji. Like it looks like something that Yoji would do. Like he should be able to wear that. And so he was the one that made it like the decision to say, yeah, you can like rock that. So that was a part of my uniform. And it's funny because I would wear it with like Dries trousers and like, maybe my Colin, like Doc Martens or something like that or what have you. And like now you look several years later, Dries and Stussy does a collaboration. Like that is like a full circle moment for me because it's like, wow, I was on it in the way that it could be merchandised. And then on top of that, you had like the musical component, whereas like I was a fan of Griselda and like, like all those guys like that. And I'm juxtaposing that music with selling, $17,000 the row, baby lamb jackets, right? And it's like that juxtaposition in 2015, 2016 didn't make sense. It was like, no, we don't want this abrasive and aggressive music, and it wasn't even aggressive. It was just more so like the lyrics it wasn't bossa nova, because it was so eclectic in there where like, I guess you can say like my retail family kind of took me in, like Alan and Wolfie, like they came from Barney's, like up here, on the Upper East Side, and they brought that like that prestige of retail, like high-end retail and the way you go about it. And they taught me how to sell. They taught me how to do retail. And so like, but they also brought those influences, right? Like, so it was funny because, Kanye was doing, Father Stretching My Hands was the Like and Pablo album where he was doing, what was the song he did with Tiana Taylor, where she was dancing?
Jono and
Fade. And so Fade, like those records, those house records, we were already listening to that. So when that album came out, I was like, oh wow, like I've been listening to Theo Parrish, and like I know what these things are, I know what these sounds are. They're interesting because like Alan and those guys brought that level of like, you know, eclectic like music taste to Todakayo. And I brought both like the R&B and soul and, you know, hip hop elements to it, but it all made sense. And that's why still to this day I tell people that was the best working environment I've had, including my time at Nike. Probably, you know, I guess you could maybe remove the Virgil moment from that, but like as a whole, you know, that like Todakayo moment was the best working environment because we had like Grant, you know, that came from Dover, was selling jewelry, but he came away as a manager. Me as like this freelancer, entertainment industry, streetwear, things of that nature. Alan and Woofy, high-end retail, other than the came from women's retail. And so it was like a nice energy. And then Jill was the mastermind. Todakayo was literally Jill's, like Jill and Philip, I don't want to leave him out either because he was like in Cassandra. I don't want to leave them out because they were the point of view as well, like in terms of like what does the downtown New York City and contemporary men's and women's client look like? And you were essentially my client, a guy that understood how to merchandise, you know, Issei palm trousers with a PlayStation, vintage PlayStation T, Nikes, or whatever it may be, right?
Sure.
So,
yeah.
You know, yeah, Todakayo was amazing, man. Like, and that's where this cheer came from. And it was a deal. It was a big deal for me to go back and be able to grab that when the store was like going through like this period of change when need supply.
Yeah, and from what I've heard, it happened relatively quickly. Where need supply took or bought out Todakayo, and that
it was Herschel's supply.
Yes,
yeah,
and then from there it survived a few more years, and again,
where Supreme is in now,
and then both ended up defunct.
Yeah,
at this point.
Yeah,
which is sad. I mean, I've been thinking about it a little bit more in terms of the life cycle of certain stores. Just the life cycle of certain stores and how long they actually last in the industry and how long they're actually around for, how long they actually make an impact in the industry. Yeah. Example, Macy's in the 80s is a prime example of, you could say, a high fashion store that ended up not doing high fashion anymore, and obviously it has a completely different business model. Macy's actually sold EOG back in the 80s and 90s. I've seen garments that have Macy's tags on them, which I found hilarious. But I mean, it just goes to kind of show you the time that it was in when it was made, who was a player then. But then as you can see, the kind of life cycle of everything changing. You get bigger department stores like Bergdorf's or Nordstrom and all the others that still are around today, but they're big box retailers. And those seem to be, I don't want to say indestructible, but they just stay around much longer than you could say a niche store.
Yeah.
So just taking it from the perspective on like what Concert Practice does, it's like we've been around, I've been doing this 8 years. The store's been popular for maybe 3. Like, how do you continue that level of, what's the right word? Can continue that consistency of being in the public eye and doing the right things, buying the right products, but while also maintaining the authenticity of what you're actually interested in, rather than just buying whatever every other store is buying. And I think that's like the hardest thing to do, is scale the taste without diluting it at the same time is like the hardest thing. And so you have these stores that come in like Todakayo where they're doing something very well, right? But then something goes wrong along from a business standpoint, and it's here for a couple of years and then it's gone. And you see that with stores all the time. There are very few that stand the test of time, like Dover Street is an example of a store I think that does it relatively well, obviously. And then I mean, another one is If in New York.
Yes.
If it has been around forever. I mean, like, I think from the 80s, if I'm wrong, I'm kind of guessing on that, but I think they've been around a very, very long time. Yeah, with their audiences, they focus on the very, very extreme niche market. I would say even more than Dover does. So there's like different types of business models you can actually do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If is Jonah and I were talking about on the drive up here. There's like different ways of approaching it from a business standpoint. So you can go very, very niche and your audience is very focused and concise, right? You can go very broad market, which is an example of like, you could say maybe a need supply where you're focusing on volume rather than like a very core customer. And I think that the medium point, which Dover does pretty well, is that middle point where they have the low tier, the high tier, and kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you're able to offer those weirder products, but also have the more obtainable products for people and get people in the door. And then at some point they start going up the ladder in terms of what they're interested in. And having that diversity of products is very, I would say, quite difficult to match with each other, like you're saying, on the high and the low. And how do you seamlessly put those together? And that's something we always consider just with concept practice itself, is like, how do you kind of mesh stuff from 80s, 90s, 2000s, even contemporary now, things from now? How do those all kind of fit in an aesthetic direction? And I think you're having an opinion on something. I think in order to kind of survive a lot, you need to have an opinion, but your opinion needs to also be able to be flexible, and you need to be able to change with the times and kind of evolve, and your tastes evolve. If you just stay doing the same thing,
rigidity, I don't see that being a plus or a pro for a business. I think Jill was able to translate her opinion or her point of view and be able to buy for a client, opposed to, buying for the bottom line. And that, I actually just finished writing an article. I'm cleaning it up right now, but I'm writing an article about, the consumer having a look into the looking glass, and the products that they see right now is indicative of who they are. The stores are holding a mirror up to you. The products that's being created are holding a mirror up to you, because you're telling the market makers and the business people that this is what you like, and it reeks of being lazy, being a label whore, and things of that nature. But that also stems from the retail sector, because the retail sector is more so buying for Instagram, based off of Instagram engagement and impressions and things of that nature. And so that's informing their decision making, which then gives the customer a certain thing, which is nothing but a carbon copy of what they see on social media. And so therefore it's almost like a homogeny in a sense of like, there is no opinion. There is a monolith. And a monolith is just nothing but groupthink. It's a collective thought. And social media is a snapshot of that collective thought, And so I think with Jill, she was literally an artist, and that might have been something that may have worked against her in I guess in the end, depending on how you want to look at it. But the Herschel guys came in and acquired Totokayo simply because of the business aspect of it, but not because of the direction of the company itself. Like, creatively, we were able to set the tone for what things look like downtown, in a sense. Outside of us, it was La Garçon and opening ceremony. On Howard Street across from Rick Owens. Yeah. But I mean, people were coming up the block 5 minutes up Crosby Street to come shop with us, because we had Betmont. We had the new Raft Bob, in a very unique way, a Rick Bob that was different from just 5 minutes down the street, because Jill was buying for a customer. Philip was buying for a customer. Cassandra was giving her opinion about what she thought the woman should look like, the Totokayo woman should look like, and was informing her decisions based off of her personal taste, Yeah. And so, I think that just substantiates the point you're making right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I always say it's left and right brain thinking.
Yes.
You have to do both.
Yes.
If like you want to make it actually viable. We do that. I do that when I buy products as well. There's always there's different levels of factors for buying or purchasing an item. Certain items we know will do better social media content wise. There are other items we just buy because we just purely like them.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like balancing the two. You understand what's going on in the trend cycle, what people are currently into. You kind of factor that in a little bit, but then you also have your personal taste into it. But then you also have things that you think about, I know we could do this type of reel with it or this type of content with it, and it'll drive kind of engagement and advertise. We basically think of it in a way it's kind of like advertising as well. But at the end of the day, all the products kind of need to work together, and you need to have that kind of opinion or perspective. And it's hard to scale. Like I said, it's hard to scale that, but I think that's the fun of it. And once you start losing that and focusing solely on the monetary aspect, it becomes more of a chore.
Yes.
Than anything.
Yeah. I guess first thing I would say is that more so substantiates than the magic is in the minutia, because really it's your point of view all the way through, not just the buy, but like the way it's going to translate to your customer, the way it'll translate, on social media. And I think that is more so what people need to have put more emphasis on, opposed to trying to copy the final product. You have to, have an aim. Like constant practice can be an aim. I'm almost certain that you're creating constant practice for it to be an aim, because you want to be able to set a standard by saying this differentiates us and this is who we are. But at the same time, I feel like, a lot of people are more so looking at the final product. And I guess I can substantiate that by saying, me being a freelancer and things of that nature, or at least when I was doing it during my tenure of a freelancer, and after I left Nike, it was people looking for the results that we got at Nike when I did the Virgil project, opposed to any other project I've done. They were looking for the end result of that project, opposed to realizing that individual was an octopus. He was different. And that is what you have to, put an emphasis on: the product, the actual idea, and then you build on top of that on the ancillary things.
Yeah, people. I feel like I guess I want to ask you this question. Like, why do you? I like to ask people, why do you follow the store? Like, what's your opinion on it?
Why do I follow who?
Yeah, our concept practice store.
Well, I feel like it's speaking to me in terms of just versionizing. It's very directional point of view. You're trying to get across something, and I think that no one has that point of view but you. I think that it's a level of like tech wear, but also like, a bit of minimalism at times, but also an attention to detail. Like you're the only one that I'm going to see a Junior Porter jacket on their site, right? Like I'm not going to see that anywhere. I mean, even if I go to Aina, or About Glamour, these stores is within the same realm as Constant Practice, but your focus when you're on Yahoo Japan or wherever you source your items from, I know that this was intentionally chosen and is speaking to me. I can only say the offering. I mean, I bought multiple pieces from you. I have the Kiko Stussy pullover, the Issei, blouse and jacket.
The watermelon joint.
Oh, it's beautiful. Actually, the Bottega. And we were just talking about how the vibrant colors were coming back because, they have that green box and stuff like that. And they obviously have, pieces that mirror the same color. And I came in with that jacket on and I was like, yeah, this is not even from, recent times. This is an old Issei piece that I got from my friend's website. And so that is the point I'm making. You're bringing something that almost feels modern and contemporary, but really is something from another period of time.
Yeah, it's how do you find products that transcend the time they were made and that can fit into the current time frame. It's what we do. And then the other part I like to add to that, like I think everything you said is accurate, at least how I interpret it. And I know Jonathan does the same. But the other bit to it is obviously trying to take the piss out of everything. All the content we do is obviously a bit lighthearted. We're trying to make it more approachable, not so serious, because that's how we are. I mean, we dick around in the office all the time.
Yeah.
Just doing dumb shit, trying to think of funny ways to do it. Because at the end of the day, our customer, like, we charge a lot for the product and there's a reason for that. But there's lots of people that don't actually get to purchase anything and they're there for kind of entertainment value. They want to see something interesting. They want to see something they haven't seen before. So it's kind of like satisfying all those needs: interesting product, humor, kind of being like lackadaisical. Like my voice now is a meme to everybody, and that was none of it's ever the intention. It's just kind of the repetition, and it becomes something, and that's kind of the brand is. Our friend Ron calls it being kind of cowboy style with branding. But like we kind of throw stuff at a wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And again, it's just kind of trial and error. Like our reels have progressed substantially. Like I feel like we know what we're doing and how we like to do our content and the aesthetic we go for when we put things together. And if it hits, it hits. It doesn't. But I feel like a lot of people that I ask that question to are basically in the same vein of what you're kind of describing, and I'm happy to hear that because that's kind of the goal we're aiming for, and we want people to feel that way, whether you buy something or not. If you just support the store and follow it or whatever, that's all we really care about at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, that it rings true. It's funny you say that, because I was actually like roaming through Soho one day, and I had my ETP hat on, the records hat, and a guy that was a photographer, he initially stopped me because he wanted me to be a part of his like street style series that they were working on. And he was like, man, I really like what you're doing with ETP. It represents this, it represents that. And I was like, wow, I'm glad you were able to pull those things from it, in terms of just like the level of intention. Like, we're not just trying to merchandise things and create merchandise things and make it a brand.
But it's very subtle the way you're doing it.
Yeah.
You're not just explicitly like saying, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why you should follow us. It's more like you do the content, you put all the pieces together visually, and it just kind of speaks to the person, and they kind of gather that from all the bits and pieces of information, and then they form their own opinion. You're not just kind of like shoving it down their throat, like, you should think this about us.
Yes.
And I hate that about brands that do that.
It's crazy. It's actually very condescending when you think about it, because you're telling the consumer that you don't think that they're smart enough to be able to digest what it is that you're trying to communicate as a brand. I don't talk down to the audience. I don't look for the lowest common denominator in the audience. I'm looking for the highest common denominator. As Peterson would say, I'm on the side of you that's aiming up. So if you're not, if you're looking for me to slap radio on, a t-shirt every, week or so that we can hit certain numbers, and then that's just not what it is. Like, Brian actually of Hip Studios, he said to me a long time ago, he was like, it feels like ETP is sort of a dojo in a sense. It's a way that it's a philosophy in a way that you approach life, and you translate that well into the company. And I was like, that might be the best way that I've heard somebody explain it, because if you think about it, there's only been one music project in terms of just like output itself, but all of the ancillary things are the things that drive home the brand story. And that's the real goal, is to drive home the brand story so that I can communicate what it is that we're trying to communicate, And so I think I've been able to hone in on that direction, like, post Cash App moment and stuff like that. It initially started out as being a record label, but then, we had to regroup, and figure out, what it is that we wanted to do as a company. And I always had like this desire to communicate something way broader than music itself. The music itself is just a soundtrack to what it is that we do on a daily basis. That's really what it is. It's just a soundtrack to everything. And so to make that the focal point kind of felt empty in a sense, like it was nothing substantial behind it, because an album release is more so a brand moment. It's, you consume the music, you consume the product, and then the moment is over. But I know that ETP is more than that, because it's really me. Like I'm trying to bring everything that I am to the company. And so, I would say it really hit home for me when I saw the Richard Branson documentary, and I realized, and I heard and saw someone be able to articulate what I felt, in the sense, like, I knew I wanted to add a radio division to amplify what it is that we're doing under the records company, and be able to, give a platform to the voices that I like, in the socio-political sphere and geopolitical sphere and, whatever, right? But when I heard him say their origin story started with a student body and a newspaper being socio-politically tapped into the times, and how them being tapped into the times gave them almost like a one-up on everybody else accidentally, because they were ingratiated within the culture at that time, like the acts, the Sex Pistols and things of that nature, like those bands that we still reference to this day, the Exorcist, the famous Exorcist song, like these are records that came from Virgin Records, only because they were authentically aware of what was happening during the times, and they were able to keep their finger on the pulse in that way. And when you can authentically be tapped into the times that you're living in, then by definition, you should be able to make the best art. Yeah. Your art should be timeless, because it is a signifier of a period that may no longer be here, but the music can kind of give you a semblance of what that felt like at a period of time. And I think that, when you look at the music industry, there has been an intentional effort to do away with artist development, to do away with brand building. They already want you to be built by the algorithm. They want you to be built by the algorithm, not by a fan base. So they can then come in and pour liquidity into the moment and then, capitalize on it. And that goes back to retail and it not being, stores not buying for a customer or a person that you're this archetype of a person,
Sure.
but rather the bottom line. And that's a floating target, it's not nothing meaningful that someone can hold on to.
No, it's just a quick hit and you're done.
That's all it is.
And that's it. And then you move on to the next thing.
Yeah. So, at ETP, media is the new vision, essentially. And that's what it's like, podcasts will live under that. And I feel like the infrastructure that we set up, it allows for me to live in this space here, be able to give the proper attention to the artists and help them develop and be able to really craft the sound and the brand itself. And then when the music is on the level, we all feel that it's on the level, then we put it out under records where I'll have somebody that I'm talking to a couple people right now to run that, because that's not something I want to have to devote all of my time to. So,
sure.
But I appreciate you pulling from that, like what you said in terms of the brand, because that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
And on, like I said, like the whole concept practice thing too. It's like at this point we don't even have any branding, and that's kind of at this point somewhat of the reason it adds room for just interpretation, right? But we're actually starting on figuring out and sorting out the branding that feels true to us. It's a fun process,
yeah,
to say the least. But just trying to get it to like what you're thinking about with ETP media. Just kind of having more of an umbrella of different things that you do, while not forcing the branding down people's throats, and just kind of letting it be. Having an opinion, making products based on that opinion and stuff like that.
So what do you see, once the branding, gets in? And obviously I don't want you to go too much into detail while things are in its formative stages, but what do you see for the company, after the branding is solidified? Because branding, I think people don't understand the difference between a logo and a brand identity. Like the identity itself, allows for you to tell the brand story even more. And I've seen some earlier things and they look really good. And so like, what are you planning to do once that is in a place where you feel like it's ready for the consumer's eyes?
There are a couple of things that we're working on the side. One of them's definitive. Don't know if the branding, we're hopefully going to get the branding to be part of that project. If not, it's okay. But hopefully that should be coming out. I want to say, this is just a random guess, probably sometime in May.
Okay.
It's with a UK brand, and it'll fit in with the store. And we should be having a lot of fun with the promo for that and doing some type of like flight branding, a little bit more formal in terms of the approach than what we typically do. I think that's one thing we'll start doing from a brand identity, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it, is we're going to have a mixed batch of informal content, which is like the stuff we typically do for the page on Concept Practice, where it's just kind of in a bathroom doing the normal thing with the product. But then we want to do a bit more of the formal side of things, where we're going to have better photography, slightly brand the content and the imagery and stuff like that. So you kind of start to get the ethos, but a lot of that ethos of the store that it is now, we're going to try to infuse that into more of the formal content as well. So it's going to have that bit of humor to it.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of us, honestly, just kind of dicking around and having fun with stuff, because the product that we're making is just, it's funny. It's great. It fits in with the store. I just have to say it's a gorilla, but that's all I'll leave it as.
I love that you make an emphasis on fun, because when I was at Nike, my boss, Paul at the time, he said, work is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be rewarding. It is supposed to be fun. But it's also supposed to be hard work. And me knowing you personally, I know that you're a hell of a worker. You know what I'm saying? And I actually I think it's a great segue to get into sort of kind of mapping like just your journey.
Sure.
You know, like when we first met, you know, he was telling me like, yeah, I'm originally from Kentucky, da da da, and it's like, you know, I just thought that was like really interesting to see someone come from Kentucky, he was in tech space, and then fast forward several years later, you're now with a full like, you know, e-commerce company, and with a physical space as well.
Yeah.
So like, just like walk me through that, because I actually don't know that story.
Sure. Also, just shout out for Jenna for working as hard as I do, if not more. I couldn't ask for a better first employee. She's dead over there on the couch.
Enjoy.
Yeah, I grew up in, I was actually born in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
I moved around a bit. My dad traveled a lot for work. He worked for Yum Brands,
Okay.
which is Taco Bell, KFC,
Okay.
stuff like that. California for a little bit as a kid. I ended up in Louisville, Kentucky. Shout out to Ville. And as a kid, grew up playing soccer and stuff like that. I ended up getting recruited by Stevens Institute of Technology, which is actually in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Okay.
Sound the dirty Jersey, the armpit. I was there for 4 years. I played soccer all 4 years. Had an amazing time doing that. But in terms of the fashion aspects kind of coming into play, and also the IT side of things. So I went to school for business and technology. Don't know how much that actually helped for what I actually do now. There's maybe a little bit of crossover. But the fashion interest kind of stemmed from coming here after living in Louisville. I never really cared about what I dressed in for a very long time, until maybe I was like 17 or 18. And then I started getting into J. Crew, I guess you could say, somewhat of a fashion space. At that point in time, that's hashtag menswear days.
Yeah, exactly.
2010, 2013. Yeah, getting into that a little bit. Got an undercut haircut, super short on the sides, longer on the tops, look at back kind of look. Just kind of me experimenting like all teenagers do. I got a job working in IT before graduating college. I had that secured my second to last semester in college. I worked in the IT consulting space for 7 or 8 years. I just finally quit, relieved myself of my duty from the company in November. So with them, I don't really know how much I can actually say about it, but it was, I was never very happy that I was doing that. It was just a means to providing financial support and stability and all that stuff. But it ended up working out in the long run, to be honest, in terms of giving me that runway. Yes, it was a very long runway to kind of build up to, but those 7 years were me kind of figuring out everything clothing wise and what I wanted to do, and kind of building the store and getting into a spot where I could actually quit. But the IT work is, we work for a lot of major companies in New York, globally, anything like that. I worked in Toronto for a bit, working on a not e-commerce, but just a government website, just doing website based stuff like that. It's honestly not that interesting. We work for some big pharma companies, mainly websites using tools like I'm forgetting the name of the tool now. But a lot of those website based platforms where you kind of have the Lego pieces, you can build the components out and then place them on the page.
Gotcha.
And all that type of stuff. I mean, it's kind of similar to what Shopify does, but
I see. It's almost like a SaaS type.
Sitecore. I don't know if you've heard of Sitecore before. That was one tool they use a lot. A lot of customizable components, widgets, stuff like that you can actually just put on the page, and develop a lot of pharmaceutical websites for drugs, do the releases for the drug. So we build the release. I guess the pharmaceutical one is the best example, where we would build the websites for the release of drug websites for pharmaceutical companies.
Okay.
And there's definitely some knowledge I gained from doing that work for 7 years. So I wouldn't say it was all for naught, but made some good friends doing that. But it also, like I said, it kind of allowed me to juggle two things at once. I work from home a lot. It allowed me to get my work done.
Yeah.
Do some other stuff when I need to.
Yeah.
Come back, get more stuff for work to do, finish that up, transition to something else. Just having that flexibility helped a lot in terms of the store growth. I think if I wasn't kind of working from home a lot, I wouldn't have had obviously that free time. If I'm commuting, you're spending an hour commuting, doing that type of stuff. And it was a fun time. I think I planned it right in terms of the leave, secured myself, and my family set us up for at least a solid transition into full-time with the clothing store, which we've done. 2022 was the first year was full-time. And Jonah came on. And 2022 was a good year, but, and we'll continue to do that. But I think there's definitely other things we can do, long-term that'll be beneficial for the business overall, that it will help, holistically with everything too. Because I really think the store is a phenomenal thing. I absolutely love doing it, but the same time, in terms of growth, in terms of where we need to be to make it something actually viable, I don't think people actually understand the capital that is required to actually make something viable and to be sustainable for not just to pay your employees then pay yourself, and then if you have significant others or kids and stuff like that, how much money is actually needed or required to live comfortably and enjoy the things of life and enjoy your work and all that stuff. And in order to do that, I think we need to kind of grow in different ways in order to obtain that. My father-in-law was, I think, quite relieved. He's always believed in me in terms of doing this and making it a business, but I think he always knew in the back of his mind, in terms of scalability and growth, there's going to be a cap at some point. And I'm starting to see that a little bit more now. That's not saying that we're not going to continue to do what we do.
Yeah.
Because I love doing what we're doing. It's kind of, like I said, setting it up in different ways and approaching it in different ways, and still having that clothing, the vintage store as its thing, where it's very highly curated. I would say it maybe even become more opinionated. Mm-hmm. Right? If we start doing something else, right? We have a different part of the business doing something else that relates back to the actual vintage store. And then the vintage store can be more the niche, right? If we're thinking like Soho,
yes,
it becomes very, very opinionated. Whereas the other thing we would do relates back to that, references it, right? But you are able to scale it up. And offer something similar to that, right? But maybe in like a different mindset. I don't want to say too much, but That's kind of like the general idea. Because at the end of the day, I think Jonah wants to do this a fucking long time, and so do I. But at the same time, we don't want to get burned out, because we spend a lot of time operationally just making the content, doing that stuff. And then on top of that, you have to search for clothes.
Yes.
It pisses me off when people bitching about pricing pisses me off, in terms of the amount of effort that we put into actually finding the stuff, market it, all the operational stuff, rent, paying ourselves. And there's one piece. Good luck. We have a hoodie here that we brought to show some places, and that's the only one I've seen in 3 years.
Wow.
Why will we charge less than somebody charging? Like, we just went to the Dover Street Balenciaga hoodie. It was $1,600.
Yeah.
You look at this hoodie, I guarantee you think it's better than obviously than a Balenciaga hoodie. But I feel like people don't have that perspective on vintage at this point, and I think they should.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of work kind of going into all that stuff, on top of finding it and doing all that stuff, like I said. And then the fact that there's only like one. Or you may not find it again. Like, there's some stuff I know we probably will never find again. If we do, we'll be lucky. And if we do, it's probably going to be charged a lot more now because we made it a thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the road you run into, unfortunately, with what we do. but there'll always be some brands that we will be interested in probably stock in the store. It's just kind of like that process of collecting and doing all that. It's a lot of time and effort. Like we've been collecting a couple of brands for, actually the Gerbeau stuff we started selling, that was 2.5 years of collecting.
Wow.
I think we had 200 pieces before we started selling over 2 years, but that's like a very rare case. What we say, Mandarina Duck was one that we collected for about 2 years. They're basically like four or five brands we collected for 2 years to gather up the inventory and then kind of release it. And you're kind of showcasing it and saying, this is the stuff that you should care about from these brands.
Yeah.
But that whole process, we're sitting on the cash for literally 2 years.
Yeah.
It's just tied up in inventory and we can't even release it.
Yep.
So there's all that back end effort to do that. And then you have to market it all.
Which is a separate cost that people don't understand. Even the marketing of it all, the physical and the digital are even within those two sectors are separate things, physical marketing and digital marketing. But
yeah. So there's a lot of back end work that goes into it. And then you have the whole business model of references.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people understand that
Yeah.
aspect of the business, especially newer people. I mean, I didn't when I got into it.
Mm-hmm.
So for those listening, I mean, it's a pretty interesting. So a lot of these brands will buy products simply for references to keep in their archive or to use for a specific collection. And it's not saying that they're stealing it or anything like that. It's literally what people follow our page for is to get some type of design inspo, to find something where it catches their eye. They think it aligns with their brand, and then they want to try to not replicate the exact product, but pull something from it, whether that's the type of weave of the knit or the color or the way they did a pleat and stuff like that. So you'll have brands that'll buy product simply for references and then leverage it in a way from a business standpoint. And if you think of it that way, right, they're investing X amount of dollars into a product to then make X amount of products of that, which is going to give them X amount of profit off of it.
Yep.
And so if I'm at the bottom, if we're at the bottom of the barrel, right, I guess that's kind of why it leads into this, why we want to start another part of the business, is just because, like, why can't we do something similar to that?
Exactly. Especially when you've already cultivated the client that is interested in the actual thing that they're referencing.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I get that.
We're the center point for a lot of people when you want to see anything interesting or new online.
So let's unpack that real quick, actually.
Sure.
So I want to take a step back because I know this is something that people will definitely want to get a bit of insight into. I know you don't want to have to give away all of the secrets and stuff like that, but I want you to just to unpack your sourcing process, because that is a part of the cost that goes into the price that you're charging. And then also am curious to know about, I know some of the offline conversations that we've had about brands who reference, but also give people a bit of insight into brands who reach out to reference from Constant Practice.
So for the first one, the sourcing aspect, that can take, it varies. I mean, right now we're kind of struggling to keep up maintaining a daily ritual of hitting websites. Everything's online. We try to hit the goal, at least the goal before, what I used to do was literally every single day I'd hit every single website consistently all the time. You do a round, basically. You do your round for the day, come back in the morning, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. And then products pop up, right? If you're consistently on it, you'll find stuff. If you're not, you're going to miss stuff. And that's kind of how the name came to.
Gotcha.
The repetition. I mean, everything we do is repetition. So I think back then when I was hitting all the sites, it probably would take 4 hours maybe a day just scrolling through websites. So you're training yourself. You know what to look for. And teaching somebody this is actually quite difficult. It's very hard to teach, in my opinion. I've tried teaching it before. It's repetition.
Okay.
It's hours.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's probably some fucking expression for this, but it's just a skill you acquire from repetition. I mean, I played soccer. You don't get those skills just by waking up and having them. Some people are, yes, better than others, but I've probably spent more hours than anybody online looking for clothes.
Developing that muscle.
Yes, it's a muscle memory. It's a twitch. I can literally scroll and I'll stop when I see something, and then open it, keep going. So I'm very efficient at doing it now at this point. But there's some stuff where the image is so obscure, you may just scroll over it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I'll click on it because you just don't want to miss the opportunity of seeing. Sure, you don't. It looks like some shit, but then you open it and it's like, holy fuck, this is an amazing Issey Miyake item, and it's just photographed horribly.
Yeah.
And you could have missed it because you don't know the design details. You don't know how it lays when it's flat, and how the hood's shaped when it's flat on the ground, and you could just miss it because of that. So it's all that muscle memory, all that repetition, doing it for 8 years now, and it's kind of okay. You do it for. I did it for Undercover, for Yoji, for Issei, for Comb, right? And so you take that same idea, same concept of like what makes these products so special from these brands and so desirable. How do you translate that into other brands? Formulated an opinion on those brands of all the shit in the sea, like Armani. You have, I don't know, on Yahoo auctions, you have 20,000 listings. How do you pick the one that's actually good?
And it's also going to translate well to a U.S. consumer.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's so much stuff where it's 80s Armani, but it looks like shit. Yeah. Like, why would you? That's what makes it even harder. Mm-hmm. And that's factors into like price too. Like how rare it comes up, how hard it is to find. Does it actually fit in the current zeitgeist or not? Mm-hmm. And so you're putting all that work to sift through a bunch of shit. And so you take that kind of similar approach and do it with our like other brands. Mm-hmm. But the thing is all the upfront research to know what to buy. And sometimes you have to gamble on it. I think the best advice you ever gave me was you learn from buying and trying stuff, seeing it in person.
Yes, 1,000%.
Something like that. And so I kind of stuck in my head and I was like, okay, I just got to like buy some things. And then from there, it may spark something and intrigue my interest and be like, okay, this is something to do. Mm-hmm. And then you go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And that's, go ahead.
I would say to that point, because that is something I live by. There are items within my wardrobe that I haven't worn, mm-hmm. skill tags and everything, because I'm waiting to find the right shoe to unlock a certain portion of my wardrobe. Like there was a period of time where I didn't wear a lot of jeans, primarily because I didn't like how any of my sneakers looked with the jeans. But once I found that perfect, like, Bottega boot or something like that, or the Y Project boot or something, it opens up my wardrobe in a way that I've never been able to wear it before, simply because this item that I had to buy and let sit, but I knew it resonated with me in my wardrobe. I knew it fit, my body type and aesthetically pleasing and things of that nature, but I was like, it's not ready yet. Like it's not ready to be brought out yet, or I can't merchandise this on myself in the way that I want to. These Mark Newson Nikes here, once I grabbed those, it completely opened up my wardrobe in a way during the spring and summer that I just couldn't do before. Like it allowed for a level of ease in the wardrobe that I couldn't have before, Sure. And so I definitely understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, like you were saying, where it just kind of sits in your wardrobe, I feel like we kind of do that with pieces as well, where we'll find something that interests us. Maybe it's not time to unlock it.
Yeah.
Like you said, maybe we need more time to sit on it, think about it, find more product from it, see if it's something worth investing time and money into, and it has an interesting perspective. Like I think of it that way too. So it's kind of like I said, buying for yourself, buying for your own interest. Maybe you can expand upon that within that same product, that same brand. Maybe you can't, but sometimes you just have to kind of sit there on it and see if you can find other stuff or not. And then if not, then we kind of end up selling it.
So of all those brands you've taken the time, Yahoo Japan and all, like, what companies are coming to pillage from your editorial eye for Constant Practice? What brands are coming?
I would say we have a lot of brands that buy from us, major houses. If you could pick any of them.
Exactly.
And I would
close your eyes, like, it just move your finger up and down. Yes, and got you. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just kind of funny. I think we learned that over the years too. I was a bit naive to it, I think, a year or two ago. And now I think we know who our core. I mean, we have a large percentage of our orders are from larger companies that are doing it. We also have very good customers, very good clients that buy from us and support us, and we can't be, and can't be more happy for those clients that we have, and even obviously the brands. I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's supporting us to do what we do, and obviously they see a worth or value in supporting it. And yeah, so
let me ask you this: with all of that, why? And I think that even the customer that is coming to Constant Practice to patronize the business, I think if they're not well aware, they're somewhat aware of the effort and time that goes into, aggregating all of these items and being able to curate it in a way that feels like appealing and a part of the cultural zeitgeist. Why do you think that there is a level of wanting to lowball you when you're coming with pieces like you come with? Do you think there is a lack of value that they see in your efforts, or do you think that is just what?
It's just people that are, I mean, some people are probably just are mad about what we do because we charge a lot. You could say we overcharge. At least they say we overcharge. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it is a business, obviously, and we have to make money. It's not like we're just doing this for free.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. You would be getting any content. You wouldn't get any of the product. Nobody would really be getting the level of taste that we're at least providing, I think.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else.
This is something that I think that has like permeated all through culture, to be honest with you. There is a devaluing of work as the employee, but then also the customer, valuing what the business is providing. Why? Because I think there has been an attack on Western civilization and Western society and capitalism as a whole. And because of this like socialist and communist like ideology, I believe that it's like starting to permeate through culture, people aren't valuing work and what it takes to produce something and bring something to the market,
or be competitive,
or even be competitive, right? Because why? In communism, everybody is supposed to be equal. It's like this very egalitarian type of society, but that doesn't work on a mass scale.
I think the other thing people get annoyed about prices is because they understand how we get the product. It just comes down to either they don't have the time or they don't want to spend the time looking for it, and they can maybe see how much we paid for it potentially from old listings.
Okay.
And then they look at it and they get mad because we're charging X times for it.
It's a business.
Right. No, at the end of the day, I mean, and you don't have to buy it at the end of the day. It's just there. You can view it. Just because you can't buy it doesn't mean you have to hate on it.
Exactly.
If you want the piece, I mean, I'm sorry, but we're running a business. If you want to beat us, you can beat us. But, I mean, we're putting the goddamn hours in at this point.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just, I mean, I told Jonah too, like right now we're in that phase where we're obviously growing. But in terms of the people that should be involved, it needs to be a starting 5. And I think right now we have 2. And to be a starting 5, I mean, you know what that means.
Of course. And so this is where your sports background comes in at, because you understand the importance of chemistry and everyone playing a role to get to a common goal. And so we've actually had conversations about, just the needs that you needed for the company to be able to scale and have success. So like, what are the elements you feel is missing, and how important is chemistry for, team building? Like, what is that for you?
chemistry is huge. I mean, Jonah and I are pretty similar in terms of personality, so we kind of mesh pretty well. We're both pretty laid back. But I'd say we have pretty compatible work ethic in terms of drive to get shit done.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think it really comes down to, if you want to put up, we were kind of joking today, we were like, anybody that wants to start working the store, you're going to be steaming shit.
Yes.
That's it. If you can't steam well, get the fuck out. Like, if you don't want to spend time doing it, honestly, like, if you want to spend time doing that minute, boring ass shit and do it right, we don't have time for it. It trickles up. It trickles upstream.
It does.
Steaming goes into product photography.
Yes, it does. Which translates into
website sales.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that.
No.
But that comes from retail boot camp. Like, you have to go through that rite of passage to even understand the importance of that within the system.
Mm-hmm.
And so that actually reminds me of a quote from Tom Waits, which actually I think I heard this one in Phil Jackson's book, 11 Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Waits said, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And that's how I approach everything, because it feels like, you know, if you are an individual that believes that we're all connected and we are all of one large consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to believe in the butterfly effect, and then you understand that the way you treat this individual in front of you actually impacts the way that something else happens in the world. And so once you start having that holistic view of the world, you actually have an onus and a level of accountability inside yourself, and like, okay, well, I need to make sure that I'm approaching everything that's in front of me with the same intention that I would if, you know, the stakes were on the line, right? Or somebody gave me $100K opposed to me working for, you know, however many $1,000 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that worldview, that philosophy, that way of approaching life it's not commonplace anymore. So if that is no longer the foundation of the individual, then of course they are coming to you and not wanting to take steaming seriously. Of course they're coming to you and not valuing the fact that you had to go source something and editorialize it, you know, market it, and this is factoring into the cost that they're paying for. And so, and that's kind of what I was getting to before in terms of just like this level of with this attack on just Western society and capitalism, because capitalism is mostly about production. If you produce well, then you will earn well more times than not, right? And because this system here has lowered poverty faster than any other system that we've known in the history of humanity. And there is this fallacy that we have as a society that communism, if we all just give everybody the same thing and we chop down anybody that's an outlier and make them like everyone else, then everybody will have equal outcomes, and that's a fallacy. And I think that when you understand what's happening socio-politically and culturally, then it better helps you understand what's happening across all sectors of society. And that's kind of like why I was curious, because I've been having these conversations with Brian. We've spoken about these things.
Mm-hmm.
He has that in his code to be able to like see what the signs and symptoms are of communism is.
Mm-hmm.
And he can see it because we had a whole conversation about it. We can see it coming into Western society because it's being ushered in. I think that what businesses have to understand is that, you know, this is a new customer with a different dollar than before.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be taken into account, and then, you know, make necessary adjustments. You know, that's just like my take on like the things I'm hearing you say in terms of just consumer sentiment at times, you know.
Yeah. And kind of talking about the your question about like the team and everything and the drive and all that stuff. I mean, like I said, the steaming is like day one starter type stuff. But at the end of the day, like we want those five guys or whatever, it's going to be 5 to 10, whatever. So just again, it's like a team. Everybody's on the same page. You're all working for each other. And kind of the team itself obviously is very much more, I guess you could say, communism a little bit.
Yeah, because
communal.
Exactly, it's communal in that sense, yes.
And that's important, but again, everybody needs to understand their role.
Thank you.
It's the thing. I'm not giving you a handout. You need to do what you need to do, but I'm going to get your back right if something happens.
Exactly.
It's like, let's sort it out. Let's get it done if something happened. Like when I would play soccer, I would play center back. If my outside left back, Leo, got beat, like I'm busting my ass over there, then he comes back into the middle.
Yeah.
Right. If he's outside left back, I go out left, he comes back in the middle because he got beat.
Yeah.
Right. You cover yourselves. He got beat. He comes back. He covers me. I cover him. It's kind of that mentality. But again, you all need to be on the same page in terms of the investment you are putting forth.
Yes.
And that's how you get a well operating company.
Yeah. So what components do you think you need to implement into the system in order for you to yield the results that you're yearning for?
Right. So right now, I think from a vintage store standpoint, we're pretty solid. We may need another person to maybe. I haven't even really thought this through, but basically, my brother helps from a product measuring standpoint. We have the whole kind of operational flow set up, and now it's kind of like getting people into place where I feel comfortable giving up some of my responsibilities, and then eventually Jonah will give up some of his.
Yeah.
Right, but it's quite difficult when you have a specific aesthetic and you do all of the back end work yourself to then hand that off, because I'm very particular about how I do product photos or how we do reels and stuff like that. And so, I mean, it's just kind of a natural progression. Like Jonah will probably take over product photos at some point. And then we'll need somebody to backfill kind of the stuff Jonah does.
Yeah.
And then maybe I start focusing on some of the other stuff we're working on. And then Jonah eventually comes over and does more of that than the vintage store, where he kind of oversees the vintage store, and then we're focusing on that other thing mainly. But the store's operationally still going, and we don't have to be still obviously going to be involved, but we're not obviously doing the actual physical task anymore. We're just kind of overseeing, making sure everything's good at that point. At least that's kind of the goal. And we set up that whole operation last year, and it's been doing very well. So now it's kind of like getting the pieces in place. I think the other thing would be, I don't want to say capital. I feel like we do have that, but at the same time, I don't know.
Everybody could always use a little bit more liquidity.
Yeah, no, man. It's just kind of a fine balance. And we talked about it today on the drive up. We don't want to scale. You don't want to scale too fast, but you don't want to do it too slow. You don't want to miss your opportunity.
Yep.
Because debt is a fucking horrible thing, and I do not want to be in it. It's all, the store's all self-funded at this point.
Amazing.
So every decision we make is our own. There's no investors. There's nothing. It's all 8 years of work.
Yeah, it feels like, something I always try to like live by, which is no wasted motion. It feels like that, like the constant practice, entity feels like you systemize it in a way.
Lean it, make it lean.
You make it super lean. And that was a part of the regrouping for ETP, was literally, figuring out, similar to like Elon, how he went into Twitter and was like, okay, let me trim a lot of this fat. And now the company is on the trajectory of actually, being in the green, because they've been operating in the red, the entire time. And I think it was losing $4 million a month or something like that. I want to say it was ridiculous.
I kept up on that a little bit, but
yeah. So yeah, it just was crazy. But it forces you to better assess your business model. And what I've realized is that when you sit and take some time to assess your business model, what it actually can do in the process of trimming fat, you can actually open up new verticals of income. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I didn't realize until I actually had to go through that, through that chamber, I guess you can say.
Yeah. And I've always, at this point, I'm trying to keep everything as lean as possible and no waste. And part of the thing, Jonah was fucking phenomenal. Coming in, he just started, he just said, hey, can I come in and steam? Or what do you need help with?
Yeah.
And then it just became more and more of a thing.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't pay him right away. I just started out going full time. I have a wife and kids, and I just couldn't afford. I couldn't risk something I have no idea what the return on is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just coming out of the blue and asking me if he can help.
Yeah.
And then slowly, after like 2 or 3 months, right, Jonah? I think it was, of just working, just helping, doing it, seeing it. I told him, I was like, look, if we meet these goals every month, we can talk.
Exactly.
See if it's like, I need to see if we can consistently hit this stuff.
Yep.
And then I'll feel more comfortable being like, okay, let's do this. And And it's just, I know not everybody's in that position. Like Jonah was in a position where he was able to do that. But people also need to think from a business standpoint where the owner is and what's all involved with it, where's the money tied up. Like obviously cash isn't endless, but I mean, I always was up front with Jonah and I was like, look, we hit these goals. If it becomes viable, it's viable, and we can talk money because I want to pay you. It's just I don't know at this point.
Yeah.
And because I wanted to pay him at that point. It's just it's a toss up, right? I've been doing it a long time, but then making it an actual thing, figuring out how to actually operate it efficiently and do that was a learning process on top of having someone else there trying to get involved in the process when I've done it myself for the whole time.
Yeah.
Figuring out that work dynamic. And I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to do something, you're going to just fucking do it. Work ethic wise. And no, much love to Jonah.
I don't think enough people give any benefit of the doubt or credence to the business owner. Again, which kind of goes back to the attack on capitalism and things of nature, which is the hierarchy of it all. They think that the boss is the imposing figure that is just taking advantage of the workers. Like, no, we're trying to use our minds to systemize this in the most efficient and sustainable way to be able to actually pay a service for your services.
Of course. I mean, like if you're bringing X amount of the store is bringing X amount of dollars a month, right? With just myself, if I'm going to bring you on and pay you X amount of dollars, the return on that better be X amount of dollars.
Thank you.
Otherwise, what am I doing? I'm just giving you money to help me out, but the return on it's not where it needs to be.
Exactly.
I could just make more money just paying myself and doing it all myself.
And it goes back to productivity. You have you put the money itself is to pay you for your production. It's not to pay you to just be a part of something and do something. So the moment they are trying to recontextualize themselves or step into a different capacity within, some type of like structure, and it's required of them to like actually yield some results and be productive, and you have KPIs against their job description, that's when, there is a level of pushback, or there is like, that's where the whole, the relationship changes from just knowing each other to a business relationship, because now you're actually judging their production against what they're being paid. And it's no different in sports. Like I'm a Cowboys fan. People that know me know that. And I didn't want Dak, our quarterback, to get that money. Why? Because I was able to assess his productivity. Like, is he a force multiplier? Does he make the guys better? Can he throw guys open? Yes or no? He cannot. So therefore, he needs better talent on the outsides in order for him to be more productive. In order for us to get better production on the outside and get better talent on the outsiders and wide receivers, for people that don't watch football, to get better guys on the outside, you need more money to get the best guys, because your quarterback isn't multiplying them as they already are. So we have to now find talent that can multiply him. They have to get more open because he can't throw the ball into tight windows. He can't throw the receiver open. So therefore, if he should not be paid like a franchise QB making $40 million a year, hitting our salary cap the way that he hits our salary cap, say they could be said for $30 million, and our running back was making 17, I want to say, something like that. And those numbers were hitting our salary cap in a way where we couldn't get better.
Right.
We couldn't get better talent on the line, on the outside, on the defense, so forth and so on, right? And so that goes back, that's why I love football, because it's about productivity, it's about strategy, it's about chemistry, and it's about getting to the goal, getting to a collective goal. And I feel like it's one of the last sports leagues that actually is predicated on the meritocracy. The owner has to find the best GM, the GM has to find the best scouting department and the best head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. And then those guys are responsible for putting the best talent on the field, and the coordinators and the head coach are responsible for making sure that the talent is running the script that was practice, right? And do it in the game.
Yep.
And I feel like it's an industry that has incentivized being the best at your position within the country.
Yeah.
And so And I think that's a part of the attack of football as well, because football, it embodies the American spirit, and there's an attack on the American, and the fabric and the social contract that we all have amongst each other. There are radicals that wish to attack that for malevolent reasons. And so when I hear you speak about these things, you embody the ethos of a person that, for one, understands business and what's needed to order the steps of a company for it to yield certain types of success, and then approach it with an idealistic utopian, vision. You're approaching it from a pragmatic vision or a pragmatic point of view, so that you can yield the results, so that the company itself is sustainable. Yeah. And so that was obviously one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. But yeah, I get where you're coming from, though. I understand what you're trying to build, and I think you're doing it in the right way, by literally looking at the numbers and assessing things.
Yeah, I mean, back to the productivity type of thing. I mean, like I said, I played soccer for 20 plus years. I was a D1 All-American, or not D1, sorry, D3 All-American first team my senior year. I mean,
it's about the fitness. We're going to talk about that too.
Yeah, the fitness. Everything kind of stems from my athletic background, to be honest, in terms of the work ethic, drive. My dad would ask me every single day if I ran.
Yeah.
When I was a high schooler. Yeah, he's like, "Did you go out? Did you exercise today? Did you work out?" And I was being a lazy fuck, and then knowing they go fucking run.
We all have those days.
No, but I mean, a lot of it came from my dad in terms of the work ethic, kind of being a bit overworked, I guess you could say, just hyper compulsive about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, in order, I set a sail for my goal when I first started the store a couple years ago, and I was like, there's other stores doing this, but I want to be the top dog. I don't really give a shit. And I'm just gonna do this better. I'm gonna look more. I'm gonna find something. I'm just gonna figure out how to fucking do it.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves. People think it just happens overnight, but it's been 8 years working on it. And again, that's the whole reason for the name at the end of the day, is that the repetition, the practice, all that stuff. Because at the end of the day, that's all it fucking is. And even when you're at where you're at, you're still trying to figure out something else that you're fucking trying to do. And the practice just continues and it never stops.
Yep.
It just gets more and more refined and you understand more.
Yes. Which creates a positive feedback loop. You become more efficient at what it is that you do, and because you're more efficient, you're now spending less time on things that used to be menial and time consuming. They're more efficient, which allows for you to better use your time to go and make strengthen a weaker point of your business, and allows for your customers to have a better experience, your employees to be able to now use their bandwidth in a way that better refines their skill set. And everybody's just working more efficiently and everybody's benefiting.
Yeah, it's just getting those people that get that.
Yeah.
And Jonah's the only one that we haven't really tried too many people out, but I mean, Jonah's definitely the one and that was just effing random.
Yeah.
Like completely out of the blue. I would have planned that. That was nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's divine timing. It's divinity.
It honestly is. He came in a couple of times to try on some stuff when I had opened the showroom. And it's just kind of fucking funny, to be honest. And it just became a thing, and he's officially my first employee on the books.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. He's a contractor for all of 2022, and then this year he's a W-2.
Amazing.
Which is crazy. I mean, I never thought I'd have not that I think of Jonah as an employee, really. But just finding other people that have that same type of drive where we can just go in on it, because at the end of the day, we just want to make some cool, fun stuff and have a good time doing it. And obviously make money. At the end of the day, that's how you got to do it. But as long as you're having a purpose and you're having fun doing it, the money will just kind of come. The taste is there. It's just like, how do you implement it in other ways, in other products, with other brands, stuff like that. And
to be honest with you, Zeke, man, I was listening to a podcast, I want to say maybe yesterday or the day before yesterday, and it was someone just speaking about our society doesn't allow for individuals to stumble upon opportunities like this, because they aren't devoted to the process. They aren't devoted to, you know, the constant practice. It only is a means to an end. You know,
I've told I tell people all this. I tell my immediate family this all the time. I'm like, I like 5% of my job, like a lot. I love 5% of my job. The other 95% is just all the other shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like that 5% is the game you play. The other 95%, all the training, going to the trainer after a session on the field from practice, getting the treatment, doing any rehab you have to do. That's all the 95%.
Yep.
5% is playing games, winning the championships. All that other stuff is just everything else that leads up to it. That's how I think of it. Because the best part is finding those cool clothes and then trying to market those interesting clothes at the end of the day. And that's the fun part.
You know, people think LeBron's longevity and his success is haphazard. They think it's arbitrary. They think it's luck. It's definitely a part of God's gift for sure. But LeBron, like Zion, has enough natural God-given ability to just ride it out on that alone. He could have done that. His first game, I forgot how many points he scored and how many assists and blocks and rebounds he had, but it was something that was like, oh, this kid is for real. He's fresh out of high school.
I saw him in high school.
Oh, you did, actually?
Yeah, in Ohio. I was at Ohio State Stadium for, I think, the state championship.
Oh.
I had family that was up in Marion, Ohio, which is an hour north of Columbus. And my uncle got tickets to that game.
What was that experience like?
It was crazy. We were up we actually got box seats or something for that high school game. My uncle knows some people in the area, but yeah, it was me, my dad, my uncle, and my cousin. And yeah, I remember that the slam issue that came out with him and Sebastian Telfair. Was it Telfair or Telfair?
Yeah, it's Telfair.
Telfair.
Yeah.
Long time. I still very vividly remember that cover for whatever the fucking reason was. Probably because I was playing. It was iconic, and I was also playing basketball. I was in that. I think I was in grade school still or whatever, and I was playing basketball at the time, so it was like still part of what I was doing.
Yeah.
I ended up getting away from basketball and focusing on soccer, but yeah. Anyway,
that was a period of time, man. That was a real period of time. We were just talking about it in the group chat that I have. He was like that next one that was going to have that swag that a New York guard has. He already had the family, stamp of approval and that cachet and Jay-Z showing up, and then he had to cover with LeBron James, Slam. And I remember it too. And I think that's actually a great example of like LeBron's approach, that 95% you're talking about. His approach is so diligent and so strenuous and thorough. It's not by happenstance that he's been able to be in a league for 20 plus years. Yes, his award that he won most recently, the all-time scoring leader. Yes, that's a longevity award, but the longevity within itself is an award. Because, there's stories, where, they say LeBron will get up while being at a dinner table and stretch, to keep himself loose and limber, right? We've all seen him pop up after a rolled ankle tie, shoe tight, and he's back on the court. It's only until recently where he's having more serious injuries where he has to be set out. But, he's spending, millions of dollars on his body every year. Russell Wilson is another one that's known to spend a lot of money on his body. And so, that constant practice of preparing for the game of life, for most people, but for those guys, like the professional game of basketball, the game of life needs to have preparation as well. And I think that is a part of, the constant practice or what have you, of, what it is that I do on a daily basis or on a weekly basis and how that bleeds into what I do professionally. And it seems like the same for you. And I don't think it's by accident that you have a strong sports background that I never knew, actually. I didn't know you had a sports background like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think everything that I do really stems from that. I mean, I still work out now. I don't run nearly as much anymore because my knee's kind of shot and I don't want to fuck it up more. But in terms of lifting, I do that 5-6 times a week. Nothing crazy.
Are you aware of the knees over toes guy?
No.
You definitely got to look into them, especially if your knees are giving you issues right now. Because this is me, giving a layman's recap of what he talks about. But essentially, it's the muscles around the knee and the joints that get weaker over time.
Yep.
And so what he does is he's created a system that allows for him to be able to systemize strengthening the ligaments and the tendons and stuff around the knee and the joints as a whole. And what he does is fundamentally is have people work out backwards. When I say backwards, meaning like the sled that people walk with or push, he would rather have them pull it. Instead of running on the treadmill, he'll rather have you walk down it backwards on the incline to create that level of tension around the knee to strengthen the quads. And
it's this area.
It's that area there.
Yeah.
And so, he has countless stories out, and, for everybody that's listening, knees over toes guy, all one word, obviously. But on Instagram, he has a lot of videos, of just strength training. And
a lot of the issue I think comes from, obviously playing soccer, but I also, when I played, I am very much on my toes more so than other people. Just kind of, I don't know if it's because I'm tall or just developed a bad habit. And I think that kind of factors into the level of stress. That it's mainly on my right knee, but my left one's fine. But yeah, it just it came down to just not, at this point in my life where I am, the added benefit of doing cardio, honestly, isn't really there.
Yeah.
I can get a good cardio workout just by doing more of a hit lift. Doing that within 30 minutes and just going from one set to the next, and then just keep doing it for 30 minutes. Yeah. And by the end of it, I'm pretty gassed anyway. I do still play. I dribble and kick the ball around on the field, which for those that don't know, that can actually be quite a workout if you don't do it that often, especially if you don't run. There's being running fit and there's being in soccer or basketball level fit. It's completely different.
So true. Yeah.
So you could run the whole fucking summer, and then you show up and you try to play, you'll be fucking gassed in 5 minutes.
Yep.
You could play all summer, not run, and you'll last a whole hell of a lot longer. Your 2 mile, it may not be that good, but you can still last a long time in a game.
Awareness level is there.
Yeah, because it's so much of a hit sport where it's up and down, stop, go, recovery type of mentality.
Yeah.
And which I think is just kind of funny because people don't, unless you play the sport, you would never really think you do this. Like, oh, I could just run over and over again, get really good shape, and then you try to play and you're just fucked.
Yeah, no, it's not the case at all. I'm a big Equinox guy, so like I do the cardio and the basketball, and I can second that. That is not the same thing because I kick off my workouts with like a 30 to 45 minute run. Really get the blood flowing, and then I go down and do strength training, because primarily for me it's about losing mass, essentially, and then making sure that once the mass is gone, that there is some level of like definition within having a suitable muscle skeletal system.
Yeah,
but that's what my trainer told me. He was like, we'll get to the vanity because he knew that wasn't what I was about. I was dealing with health issues and things of that nature, and so it was a matter of getting the mass down and then also strengthening the cardio, my respiratory system, and then making sure that my muscle skeletal system had what it needed for the long haul. He was like, I just want to make sure that as you get older, you don't have any issues, because the first thing that typically goes with people is like they crack their hip and things of that nature because they don't have a strong muscle skeletal system. They never invested in strength training, thinking that
Yeah. Well, that's
for vanity only.
Yeah, I mean that's why I work out 5 to 6 times a week, just mainly for maintenance.
Yeah, just for maintenance.
It's like it's like going to get your fucking maintenance on your car. It's like constantly getting the checkup over and over again, just making sure it's going. I mean, my father-in-law is 60. I don't fucking know, 63. Peter, don't kill me if I get age wrong. That man works out every fucking day.
Yeah,
63.
Yes,
but he was keeping up with us, me and my brother-in-law, in the 3.5 in a 3 mile run, keeping up with us fine. This was when I was playing, we were still either playing or like right out. Actually, it was right after college, so I was still very good shape. But like he can just run with us fine.
Do you feel like you've benefited? Because and that's why I asked this question. I was looking at. Well, actually, I came home one day from the gym, and I can't quite articulate it, but I felt like this, this like high, essentially. Like I felt like,
Oh yeah, reflective awareness high.
yeah, I felt
whenever workout high.
awake. You know, you come across that.
It's an addiction.
Yeah, it is. You chase that after a while. It's like you chase it, and it's like
My wife and I do it too. Like we get antsy if we haven't worked out.
thank you. That's exactly. You almost feel like your body is starting to get rigid, and you need to loosen it up. And this
I just like to say, I feel fat. I need to go do something. I need to like, I don't know, just like get out of the whatever we're doing and move. I need to move.
You deplete those glycogen stores.
Yeah.
So you can you don't feel all flabby.
Get a fresh pumping, boys.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I ended up doing some research on it, and the article was like, scientifically, your body actually simulates the same, I guess, it's like the same biomechanisms that happen when somebody smokes weed, essentially.
Oh, really?
You get that same like endorphin or dopamine reaction or reward. And you know, it obviously puts your body back into the circadian rhythm, rise with the sun, set with the sun, like that whole feeling. And once I got got exposed to that, I began to chase that, and you know, obviously it had a bunch of benefits. But I feel like I'm mentally sharper. I feel like I have a better, like almost.
I feel fresh. I feel fresh after I work out.
Yeah.
Or refreshed, whatever you want to say. It's a good stress reliever. I highly recommend anybody to start working out or just go run. Just go do something outside. Just relieve the stress. There's nothing better. And it builds that character. It builds the repetition. The more frequently you do it, you'll just continue to do it, and then you'll want to continually do it.
Exactly. And, partly because you don't want to lose the progress that you made.
Oh yeah.
It's very hard and difficult. Maybe that first 2 or 3 days of getting back into the gym after maybe a 2-week layoff, which is typically like holiday break. You've probably been eating some bullshit, you know, and so you feel it when you get back on that treadmill, and it's like, I don't want to feel this bad again.
Yeah, the worst is when you get sick and you're trying, after you're over your sickness and you're getting back. Like my wife and I got a bad stomach bug in February. And
we did too.
Yeah.
I think it was called a neurovirus.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because we were like, how do we get sick? And we don't ever get sick. And
same.
Yeah, but
that shit fucked us up. I was not in bed the whole day. I was out in bed the whole day. I couldn't move.
Crazy.
It was weird. But after that, like the symptoms lingered for a while too. The symptoms lingered for a while, and it took me a while to get back into the gym. And once I did, it's like you start back at zero again. Like I can feel when I do my pull-ups, I'm feeling weak after a couple. Whereas like if I'm in a routine of doing it for like 3 weeks straight, I get on that pole bar and just fucking pump them out. And it's just kind of funny how that does it.
Yeah, man. You know, to be honest with you, I think, you know, a lot of this also is like neuroplasticity, like just the fact that your brain has a better ability to build new neurons and learn new things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the biggest benefit that I feel like I've gained from being physically active.
Mm-hmm.
You know, coupled with, you know, I'm a big supplement guy. Like, you know, I do lion's mane, mushrooms from Host Defense. That literally saved, and I'm not even being like, you know, hyperbolic when I say this or being overzealous at all. But Paul Stamets' Host Defense brand literally saved my family's life. And it started with me because I ended up using it once I was on my health journey to get back. You know, fast forward, COVID comes around. Thankfully, early in the year, my mother actually took my advice and was like, hey, Mom, you need to make sure that you want a Garicon, breathe mushroom, and lion's mane. Those are the 3 I take every day. You know, not even factoring in the vitamin C with bioflavonoids. So it makes it more bioavailable. It's basically simulating eating an orange or greens, you know, whatever. And so, and then vitamin D and magnesium. I'm like, you take these 3 supplements here and you won't have any issues. I mean, my grandmother, 60 plus, kicked it. Grandfather kicked it. That whole household, my mother's household, everybody kicked it except for her now late husband. And I think that's more of like, you know, sometimes like, you know, men, we're very like, I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want to take these supplements and all this shit. Like, it's like this very like rigid thinking, right? And the lack of, you know, being receptive to things can actually be to your detriment. And I feel like I had my own case study within my own family and households where everybody was on from probiotics coupled with all the things I just mentioned before, you know, and everybody kicked it. And my little sister, because she's younger than everybody, she didn't even get it. So it's like,
that's it.
It's crazy. It's like,
my daughters never got it. So
so
my wife and I both did, but
so I mean, I just think that it needs to be a level of emphasis on, making a concerted effort to do somewhat of a positive thing for your body on a somewhat consistent basis.
You need to be taking care of yourself at the end of the day. You can't just be, I mean, there are plenty of people that do it. I'm not trying to shame anybody or anything, but especially if you don't come from that type of background, though, I can understand how it can be hard to get into that rhythm and routine of working out, taking care of yourself. Like, it's not easy. That's the fucking point of it. The reward is how you feel, how you look. The easy way out is just not giving a fuck.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the same thing with work. Everything's related to each other, and it just depends on how you're viewing it all.
Yep.
If you just want to be lazy about everything, then you're gonna seek out the easiest thing. And sure, I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm lazy as fuck sometimes too. Everybody is.
We're all fallible.
Yeah. We all have our flaws. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just saying that taking accountability, trying to do better yourself, which will then better the others around you, like you were talking about before, is a huge component of it.
Yeah.
John and I were joking around how, like, when we really hit it big, we'll just have a gym in the office.
Yeah.
And go back to work.
No, man. And you know what? It's a dojo. It's literally a dojo. And I feel like I wish Brian was here right now. Him and I were actually having conversations right now about him being a co-host. Like, because we have these conversations all the time.
Yeah.
Not to have like a hard segue, but he asked me a question. And I don't know if it's necessarily hard, actually, because we're talking about business and things of that nature. But he asked me this question. Like, I've never been asked it before. He posed it like somebody would ask, "What's your favorite team?" He said, "Who's your favorite CEO?" And I was like, wow, like no one thinks about it in our context, like who's your favorite CEO, but he's such a business savvy guy, runs a business with his wife and things of that nature. And it was like, we had these conversations all the time, but he never posed that question to me before. And I was like, it's like Elon actually. And I had to think about it, but I've substantiated why before, but not to a question posed like that. And I would say the reason why is because he's the first example, and I've seen someone weaponize money in a way where he can push back against tyrannical behavior within society. I've watched somebody be literally the closest, parallel to Iron Man, essentially. The fact that he can literally make a decision to move Starlink satellites over Ukraine to be able to help them better communicate, even though they still gave him their ass to kiss, and the U.S. government all to come back around and say, "Hey, can we use your satellites again to fight this proxy war that that you all probably shouldn't even be involved in?" And he was like, "No, like you guys are like literally assholes, and like why would I do that?" And then you're also a part of the same crew that's like doing with these Twitter files and weaponizing government. Mussolini had a quote that said he defined fascism as the merging of corporate and state.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he defined it. And that's essentially what Elon is fighting against. And so he has to be my favorite CEO right now, because I only see him with the person with fuck you money saying fuck you, and like I guess maybe Rogan may be a close, second to that, but no one's really creating a counterculture. Like I don't remember the last time that we've had a true counterculture. Everything that is quote unquote counterculture has been corporatized. If big pharma and big corporation is on the side of your argument, you're not the counterculture. Mm-hmm. If your movement is funded by Bank of America and so on and so on, you are not the counterculture.
I forget what I was listening to the other day, but it was maybe it was Rogan. Yeah, it was Rogan. He was talking to Michael Malice. They were talking about how it was pretty funny, fucking stupid conversation. They talked about a fucking grizzly bear in Alaska that broke into somebody's house, and the guy had a Colt 45. He shot him a couple of times. The bear's just chilling in the living room, and then the neighbor comes over and shoots him with a 12-gauge slug in the head. Yeah, but a giant ass fucking. What they described it as, like a 10-foot grizzly.
Goodness,
that was in somebody's house in Alaska. It was a pretty wild thing. It's on the news. I'm sure you could look it up. But
Wow.
They were just talking about how, from a political standpoint, the stances from parties have basically flip-flopped in the last 20 years.
Indeed, they have.
It's just so funny weird to think about at the same time. Like, before, in the early 2000s, you'd be saying the exact same thing
About the
Republicans are saying right now, and then vice versa. And it's just, none of it makes any sense. I just feel like it's all just a bunch of, it's all just a bunch of show, and you have no idea what the fuck's going on.
It is. There's no political solutions for cultural deficiencies, and so this isn't and me advocating for the right in the conservative party over the left and the progressives. It's just a matter of pointing out the reality of it all, that it's all very nonsensical, and to your point, it is a show. It reminds me of one Plato's quote where he said, "The city is what it is because the citizens are what they are." Mm-hmm. And then also Plato's allegory of the cave, like where, you have the performative showman, mm-hmm. and you have the prisoners looking at the showman playing in front of the fire on the wall, and then the prisoners are looking on the wall thinking that's reality, when it's really not reality. Those are performative showmen playing in front of a fire that's projecting onto the cave wall that it's bigger than what it is, and that
it's always, look at this while I do this.
Exactly.
Let me look at this hand while I do this with my other hand. You can't see the other hand, what I'm doing with it. Just pay attention to this.
Yeah, and I hate it all. I hate it all, honestly, because I feel like, and I try not to use the word hate. Actually, I'm like, this is not the words I want to put out there, mm-hmm. but I really dislike, what's happening, because I feel like there is no longer a thing that unifies as us. And that's a part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, Fluidity of Thought. And I specifically said the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, because the left side is about, creativity and mm-hmm. and seeing the diversity in it all, and trying to bring light to things that may be disenfranchised or underrepresented and things of that nature. And then the right is more of like operational, logistical, and analytical, and strategic, and things of that nature. And you need both.
You do 100%. For any business, anything to operationally work well, you need both sides of it.
Yeah. I'm curious to know your thoughts about the Pharrell and LVMH situation. Like, what are your thoughts around that? What are the ramifications of this new partnership between them two?
Hot take.
Brian had a really good take on this, by the way. I wish we'll get together, but he had a really good take. I'm curious to know yours.
Well, I'm very on the pulse. I watch a lot of YouTube content, so there's bits of information that kind of get sprinkled in from mm-hmm. specific people that I watch. I think it makes sense why they would do that, mm-hmm. to me. Whether I agree with it or not, I just feel like it's kind of where the space is going, unfortunately. Right, he's an iconic tastemaker, 20 years plus of being a tastemaker, which is hard as hell to stand that test of time and continue to do it mm-hmm. over and over and over again, and to be authentic with yourself, which I feel like at least he comes off that way. I don't really pay attention too much to Pharrell, so I can't really speak too much, but that's my hot take impression of him. In terms of LV and him together, I mean, you can see how he can pull certain people into the space and maybe make it work mm-hmm. well. It's somewhat similar to like how Virgil operated, but maybe a little bit different.
Yeah.
I think you can kind of carry that similar ethos, but in a slightly different way. But that the customer that LV has gotten over the last couple of years since when Virgil was in there, I think obviously translates probably pretty well to stuff Pharrell would probably be doing. Is it the right thing for fashion? I don't know. It's very interesting to see, right? You have a mixed bag of celebrity-esque creative directors mixed with traditional creative directors or designers, I guess you could say. And the houses are going in different directions, right? You have I guess you'd say, I think Daniel Lee's more of a traditional creative director from that standpoint. I think he went to CSM or something like that. And he's at Burberry now, and he's going to be doing his thing. So that I feel like it's just a completely different business model. Like if you compare a Burberry business model that they'll probably be doing, it'll be more similar to Bottega Veneta and what he did at Daniel Lee, obviously with the Burberry twist on it. But then LV's in this like other space where I feel like there's the opportunities for collaborations, even though I dislike that word a lot. There's just a lot of different things or connections where he can pull from different people, get them involved to do different interesting things, which I don't have a problem with. I'm not saying I like it in a negative sense. I'm just saying that's maybe where I see it going in that sphere. I mean, what are your thoughts on it at all?
When I saw it, when I heard it, I understood it as a businessman. I get it, right?
Yes.
It's a matter of selling expensive sublimation printed shirts that might have a Louis LV monogram all over it in some way, shape, or fashion, right? And then selling leather and rubber sneakers, right? And so that's the business model. And that's something I actually learned when I was at Totokayo, to bring this conversation back to my days there. And Alan Gaynor, who I want to make sure I he's like a fashion encyclopedia. I mean, people will walk into the store. I think he's with JW Anderson, by the way, right now. Like in Japan, he's like, they like took him in and like brought him part of the team. But he was such a fashion encyclopedia, and he used to speak about things in such a way that had almost as if he was an editor at a magazine. And I always loved people who intensely loved what they did for a living, because it was infectious. You see somebody really devote themselves to their craft, you can make a documentary about that. Like that's compelling, that's a compelling story, right? And he was that individual. Something he said when I was in the store, he was breaking down to me, because at the time, I think by that point I was already promoted to be senior sales. I don't know if I was running the men's department yet, but I was promoted to senior salesman, and I was making commissions on the things that was being sold on the men's floor, and sometimes other floors if I had a female client. But he said him and Wolfie actually was like, this is your Balmain, biker jean, G-Bone and Sheen, Rottweiler era, meaning that like when we had Vetements and stuff like that, it was going to sell regardless if the person walked in and was window shopping or not. If they didn't buy it, some other person was calling, emailing a request from Seattle store or something, right? And only putting this up because that was around a time where fashion was changing. And in a more pronounced way. Not that that was the biggest nexus point, but it was a very pronounced change in what was deemed luxury, right? And Alan said he was saying this to me, he felt that what happened at Barney's when he was there, they were undermining their own business. He said he felt like they prioritized sneakers. I think this might have been the Raf Oswego era.
Yeah.
And he was like, they prioritized sneakers and the stuff I just mentioned, G-Bone and She Balmain and, all those things of that nature, like, the double zip hoodie at that time and stuff, opposed to their leather goods and hard bottom and this Upper East Side, uptown clientele. They didn't service that anymore. They were servicing the downtown dollar because it was quicker. It was quicker and it was easier to sell to a guy that's seen something
XYZ person wear.
Yeah, XYZ person wear it on social media, and it was able to just sell.
Yep.
And so that made the retailers jobs easier. It made the sales associates jobs easier.
There you go. Think.
And so I look at this as it's a win in the short term, but I'm not necessarily sure what this signals in terms of the longevity of the business. So that's my answer to that. I'm happy that Pharrell got the look. As far as a successor to Virgil, I think it makes sense if you want to keep that same customer and tap that vein, but in a slightly different perspective. I think that he will have a better connectivity with the Asian market, probably better than Virgil even had, simply because of the affinity that he has for the culture, they've had for him over the last 25 plus years. And that was something that Brian kind of brought to my attention. I want to make sure I give credit to him and him pointing it out to me. He was like, he said, think about the first image that he posted when the announcement happened. He was like, it was him and Nigo. He was like, Nigo was over at Kenzo, which is, a part of the same family. And he was like, yeah, he's just going to tap Nigo and they're going to just like tap into the Asian market. He's like, I'm Asian. He's like, I know how we consume and how we look at both of those guys. And he was like, it makes total sense, And he was like, this is a full-on war between LVMH and Kering Group as well.
That's what a lot of people have been saying on YouTube. Not mainly the Asian market, but obviously it's the Kering LVMH group.
Yeah.
Duking it out. Which, it's said, kind of going back, that's the whole issue I have with a lot of this stuff now is it just seems like it's a bunch of shit. And I'm just tired of it. I was really tired of the shit product being made. There's nothing interesting. We went into Dover Street. There was one Rick piece that was insane. Rick kills it. There's nothing bad to say about Rick. I don't think you can. But then when you're looking at some of the other stuff, like it's interesting, but then from a guy's standpoint, it's like, what the fuck is there honestly to wear?
Yeah, it's like you either want to look like a fashion victim, a caricature of what you see on flappers.
I just want to fucking blend in.
Yeah, it is. That is exactly what people want to do. They want to blend in by looking different. What's so crazy? Let's talk about it actually.
Mm-hmm.
So we already established that I was at Totokayo running the men's department. We couldn't even sell Marnie to. We were double exposing Marnie mohair sweaters, the ombre yellow, the blue, and the ox blood burgundy ones.
Yeah,
like I remember those pieces. When I first left Totokayo, I had a few Marnie pieces. I have the two-tone blue pinstripe trousers that came with the matching jacket, and the shorts as well from that collection. It was like the Baja short or something like that. It had the red and white fabric that was hanging out underneath the blue short. Like it was like so many ill pieces during that period of time that people just weren't even attracted to because it didn't have the wrapper canvas.
Didn't have a cachet. I remember I was the same time frame. I was like interested in Marnie.
Yeah.
I think I bought it in like 2016 or something.
That was the year, exactly.
And I was like, this is pretty cool stuff. Obviously a very high price point, quality fabric. It's an interesting brand, obviously, but yeah, it's the cachet aspect of it where it doesn't really get its notoriety or its dues until XYZ person wears it and then everybody's like, oh, fuck, we should be wearing this. So-and-so wore it.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I just felt like it was a happy medium. I felt like it was the perfect brand for someone like me because it was the happy medium between like the fun elements of Cone, but then also the chicness of like a Prada.
Yeah, that's a good way to explain.
Like I was like, why? In my mind, like, why isn't this more popular? But then, few years later, you have Vert and other people just speaking about the brand, and now it's a thing that people flex and speak about as if it's like Dior or something, right? But I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means for everything. Like, what does that mean for everything? Because now you're taking the substance out of the thing in terms of the consumer. I don't care who raps about it, but the consumer, they're only reacting to it because a rapper says something about it. And what does that do? That signals to the brand to say, okay, we need to tap this vein, which is the same thing that Barney's was doing and we were talking about. And we look at the end goal of Barney's. The end goal is out of business. And so when you think about that, it kind of reminds me of what I'm looking at right now. It's globalization permeating, with the ugly side of globalization permeating all through society.
Well, a caveat to that would be like Rick Owens dunks.
Yeah,
why hasn't that happened to Rick though?
Because Rick knows how to design for a customer.
Yes, the aesthetic is pure.
Yes, it's pure. It's really him.
But you can grab the low hanging fruit, or the rapper can grab the low hanging fruit, right? And it doesn't dilute Rick at all.
Dark Shadow, all those things work him up.
Yeah, but it's really the Geo Baskets and the Ramones and stuff that are obviously get thrown around a lot. But even though it's a meme, every rapper wears them.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody regards Rick. It didn't dilute his brand at all. It just boosted it, if anything.
So this is me thinking on the spot, because I'm thinking, because when you say that, you have to talk about the business model. His company is vertically integrated. They mill, and manufacture and source all of their things, you know, and sell directly too.
I didn't even know they had it fully vertically integrated.
Yeah, like if you look at the tags and stuff, it's like Rick Owens, like I think it's like LTD, like limited, whatever, or something like that.
That's the goal, man.
That's
Vertically integrated.
That's the vertically integrated. And we're talking about what constant practice, where you understand your customer, you can play the niche in runway piece game and have a muse or things of that nature, and really drive home the brand aesthetic and the brand story, while having the Air Force One or the Air Monarch be the driving force of the brand in terms of liquidity and cash flow. Yeah. You can build on top of that with the brand story, but that's Nike, vertically integrated, which allows for what? It allows for the brand to be able to have...
It's the cone model.
It's the cone model.
It's the cone model.
It's the cone model as well.
Yeah, that's the goal.
You have to have the resources and the liquidity to tell your story. A lot of brands don't do that, though. A lot of brands just chase the dollar and continue to top the vein without telling the brand story because the money is coming in so quick. Where it's like, well, why do more if we've already churned out X amount of dollars?
Doing X amount of dollars is just fucking boring. It's too easy.
Like just make... This is something I also want to make sure that I emphasize. Just making money is boring as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
people think you're crazy for saying that, but yeah, I can.
Because a lot of people,
and the moment's fleeting too.
It's fleeting, and they value money. Money is a fiscal tool to build the person, place, an idea, or a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. Money is a literal fiscal tool to do those things and obviously make more money for you, right? Have babies. Like, that's what the money's meant to do, have babies and do those things. We don't have a value system that values the meritocracy of ideas.
You gotta learn how to lose. You gotta learn how to take a loss.
You have to.
Yeah. And even, I was never part of a winning team in soccer, right? I just valued more playing and learning and kind of growing my skill rather than, yes, winning is important, right? You need to be competitive. I don't think I really gained my competitive edge until I got into college, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But I forget where I was going with this.
Well,
I lost my train of thought.
It's all good. Well, how we got on this, because this is what fluidity of thought is. It's a matter of just literally having a fluid thought and it goes where it goes. But how we got on top of this, got on this topic was talking about just the state of things in fashion and Rick Owens' business model.
Oh, right.
And I spoke about, them, being the top or the biggest person.
Yeah. From a constant practice standpoint too, if we do that, we try to do that with our product offering as well, where you have more kind of like lower hanging fruit, which you could say are like teas or whatever. We don't buy too much of that, but then you have this price range, right, of products. And that's how you kind of can satisfy a lot of people's needs, right? You have people that will spend the more money on the more expensive stuff. You have people spending on the low money stuff. And at the end of the day, you're kind of buying items based on all of those factors too. Mm-hmm. But that's how you can do some of the more creative things, is by having some of the more quicker return, quicker cash flow, liquidity type of stuff. But yeah, from a business standpoint, being fully vertically integrated is ideally where to get at. And that's honestly a goal I have at some point. I'm thinking that's like 45-year-old man shit. Honestly though, like I'm being realistic about it. That takes time.
Yeah.
To be fully vertically integrated and do all that stuff, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I think you'll get there simply because you have the proper system in place. I don't think that anything is. I think it's always an element of luck, but luck is. I always tell people, like, I could have been unprepared and not have the level of experience that I had when I ran into the people from Nike, and they wouldn't have taken me on. So I would have been unlucky in that situation, opposed to being lucky because I had all of those years, right, in terms of freelancing and having certain relationships and having a level of understanding of where the Nike product and fashion sits. So I guess I'll give a little bit of context to that, because we're talking about fashion and business models and things of that nature. I'll give a bit of context to because I don't think I've ever spoken about this publicly, but Nike was losing a lot of market share to Adidas. Like, they had Raf Simons, Rick Owens, A$AP Rocky was stamping it, Jeremy Scott, Pharrell with the Stan Smith deal and all the stuff like that. Like, it was a lot happening with Adidas. They just don't have the ability to storytell, and they don't have a strong enough product to be able to compete in the way that they need to compete in order to dethrone in the American market, at least Nike.
Yeah.
And so me coming out of Totokayo I was the perfect individual to be able to usher them into the future, essentially, because on one end of it, they were seating wrong. I came in and I literally owned the seating list. Like the document itself was created by me, and my boss Paul gave me that responsibility to like figure out who needs to get the product and why. Yeah. Once I showed him who was getting what, and he saw it, he was like, okay, cool. After that, it was a go. Nike needed to understand how their product sat in the fashion sphere. Like they didn't understand it really. And so when they came and grabbed me, it was a matter of like, okay, well, how does an acronym Air Force One and a comb trouser and a Kiko Stussy hoodie make sense, right? And who is that guy or that woman in New York City, that can drive home that brand story? And so when I think about their business model and I think about a Rick Owens' business model, I don't see that much of a difference. And it was also rumors that he was actually supposed to come over to Nike, and even before the Adidas thing, and then he ended up going to Adidas, and then even after the Adidas deal was over, he was supposed to come to Nike, and it was supposed to be, Rick Owens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was supposed to be that they knew they had to like figure out a way to authentically ingratiate themselves in that world so they can understand that and also drive home the brand story, while that's not really the thing that's keeping the business afloat. All great businesses, and to circle back to you have a system in place where you now understand your business in a fundamental way from the ground up. You can better assess whether liquidity needs to be put in order to yield the results you need to yield. And so I feel like if you've already understood your customer, or you understand your customer, I don't think it's that hard to translate the insights, the silhouettes, the fabrication, all of those things there into a private label, or what, theoretically in the future, if you have more, you can translate that into that and then grow that side of the business, because that's what Totokayo was doing before, things went awry. But they was literally taking Issei full-length coats and comb this and Yoji that, and, creating the Totokayo private label for the men and the women. And so I know that the business has that business model works in terms of generating the money, but not necessarily buying more product, because you see that the product is selling. Well, if that's working, don't, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
And then take the liquidity and then now just keep telling the brand story, drive home the brand story. And I think what a lot of brands don't understand is driving home the brand story doesn't necessarily mean throw a big logo in front of a t-shirt. It means that if you
do appropriate projects.
Thank you. If you are a brand like Cole, like LV, whatever, you like Marc Jacobs, like Steven Sprouse. He went and top Steven Sprouse, and now that gives the brand a level of edge and cachet and a space that might have felt alienated to that crowd, right? It opens that whole world up, and trust me, there's a dollar there that can't afford a constant practice, archival piece. There's a dollar there, but if the brands don't invest the liquidity into driving home the brand story in a non-superficial way, then
I think that's what we've been kind of lacking, is from a logo branding standpoint. I think we have the brand identity is pretty solid. It's really the kind of having a little bit more of a color, some kind of signifiers that you can kind of just I'm not saying plaster it on there, but just like tastefully, subtly put it in there, like some of the comb work magazines would have, where they just kind of take random images and they would subtly place it in there, and it just feels like a comb thing. You know what I mean? It's like a completely random, obscure image, and then you just kind of slap the comb branding on it in a very subtle way, but it doesn't. It's not like, I don't think it was an image they actually made. It's just like recontextualizing it in a comb way, thinking of it in a comb way, with comb branding on it, with comb products and that comb magazine. It makes you think of the image in a different way.
Yeah.
And so like, how do you kind of create content imagery like that, and then apply a little subtle branding to it, so that basically you have this whole constant practice feeling to the shoot, to the imagery, and you have a little bit of branding in there, and the branding's subtle, nobody thinks about it, it's just kind of there, but the image itself feels very constant practice. I think the main thing is focusing on the context of the imagery.
Yes.
Will translate the best, and that's what we're going to try to do with some of these little projects coming up, where we're going to have a lot of fun with it. And I'll tell you a little bit afterwards between you and I. But
articulating a through line for the brand, and so articulating that through line, I think that's really important. That's essentially what I've been trying to do, is just articulate a through line between, socioeconomics, what's happening, culturally, and how that impacts, or how you can have an impact on the discussion.
Yeah. And,
so that's, I get it.
And one of the things John and I kind of struggle with is, and I think companies also struggle with us specifically, is they don't know how to interpret us. They don't know how to approach us. Yes, companies come for references, but I think we offer much, much, much more than that.
Yeah.
And I think brands, I feel like some people can see potentially where it would be, but I don't think it's like blatantly obviously from Instagram influencer, you do these types of things. Oh, your brand, you do X, Y, and Z things. Mm. Right? We're this kind of like muddled, we're this mutt of, I feel like, the two a little bit, right? Because you have a little bit of Jonah and myself's personality infused into the store.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of, I guess you would say, influencer, even though I dislike that term, because you have our own personal taste in there too. But then also you have a branded store kind of aspect of it, right? Where we sell products like Levi's, right? So there's obviously doorways, I think, that should be opened to where working with those types of companies could be advantageous, not only just for us, for them, but also for the consumer to make better products.
Yeah. Well, I hope that after this hour or 2 hour long interview that we've done, that people better understand the mission that Constant Practice is on, man, and how they can better engage with you and engage the company as a whole, outside of just, utilizing you all as a resource for a reference point. But yeah, brother, I really appreciate you taking the time, man, to come all the way up from Virginia, obviously for other things, but as well for this, and you as well, Jonah. Thank you.
Yeah, you and Hips. The two reasons that we came up, and then everything else is auxiliary that we're just kind of fill the gaps with while we're here.
Yeah, well, thank you again, man. I appreciate it, and hopefully this won't be the last one.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Hopefully we'll be taking more trips up here on a more frequent basis. Should be fun.
Well, I would say thank you to the audience for, sitting through this with us and exploring these ideas, these ways of thinking, and these different thoughts. And until the next time.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.